How's it going, YouTube? I'm Tyler and welcome to the Fishlomoto channel. Today is a typical British day for me. It's raining. So I'm going to do some jobs I've been needing to do for a little while in my garage, one of which is the fork seals on my partner Flora's 2016 ER6N. We noticed a little while ago the forks are starting to get really soft, and also she noticed that the left hand fork was starting to weep a bit. So because of that, I've gone out and got some new fork seals and dust seals, new bottle of fork oil, and that's what I'm going to be doing in today's video. Before we get started, let's have a look at what tools and equipment you're going to need to be able to do this job yourself at home. So if you're wanting to have a go at doing the fork seals yourself at home, you're going to need the following tools and equipment. You're going to need an 8, a 6, a 5, a 4, a 3 and a 14mm Allen key. You're going to need a small flathead screwdriver, a little pry bar. You're going to need a ruler, some red rubber assembly grease, a ratchet, a 22mm socket, a 12mm socket, a board pen, a fork seal driver, a new set of fork seals, a new set of dust seals, at least 1 litre of 10 weight fork oil for this bike, and a measuring jug. As well as this, you're going to need a container to pour the old fork oil into, some brake cleaner to help clean everything up, and some rags, because this can get messy and it's always handy to have some rags on hand. So this is all the tools and equipment you're going to need to be able to do this job. Let's have a look at how I've jacked the bike up using a paddock stand and a jack just to raise the front end off the ground a little bit so that I can then start disassembling the front end. And here's the bike. It's in the garage, ready to go. As you can see on the back, I'm using a paddock stand, keeps the bike upright, nice and level. And then to raise the front wheel just a little bit off the ground, I've used a scissor lift. One point is on the exhaust, another point is on the engine, just helps supporting the exhaust. Ideally, you shouldn't be jacking a bike up on the exhaust, but on this one where it's on the engine as well, it's just there for a bit of extra support. So now the bike's in the garage and ready to go. I'm going to make a start by first of all removing the 2 bolts and taking off the brake calipers on both sides. Once I've done that, I can undo the pinch bolt, axle nut, and then take the front wheel off the bike. With the front wheel off the bike, I can then start taking the fairings off, i.e. this one, and then work my way up. I think I'm going to have to take the windscreen and possibly the headlight fairing off, just so that I can get to the fork pinch bolts, which are here and somewhere back here. One thing I did forget to mention, which I thought I'd mention now, is this here is your ABS sensor. Because we're taking the forks off the bike, we're going to have to undo this bolt, just take it off, but we can leave it dangling with the calipers and everything for now. So now, with all the fairing work off the front, I've just tucked it up on the top for now so I don't have to undo all the indicators, but I can clearly get to these fork pinch bolts here and this one here. So I'm going to undo them, and then hopefully I should be able to just slide the forks out the bottom. And that's it, both the fork legs are now off the bike, and we can then crack on with replacing the fork seals and oil. I can already see, just from first inspection, the dust seal is all corroded, starting to split and break. Bit of corrosion on the stanchions, nothing too bad though, but definitely time for a service and replacement of seals. So I'm going to work on the forks one at a time, because then that way, if you're ever unsure about how anything came apart or which way washers went, you can always refer to the other one. So make a start, get my little screwdriver, pop off the old rotten dust seal. Yep, that's definitely crumbling, seen better days. With that done, we can now see inside and all the corrosion. No wonder why these fork seals have failed, but within there will be a metal retaining clip. So you just want to have a little poke around, try and find the edge of it. When you do, just ease it out little bit by little bit. Just don't force nothing, take your time, and eventually it will come off. So there's one spring clip. Now, before we undo the top nut, there's a nut inside of here we need to crack off. It's the 8mm. So while holding the stanchion and the lower fork leg, just back it off a couple of turns, making sure it's moving freely. It's just easier after we get this top nut off. That cracked off, I can now go ahead and undo this top nut. When it comes to cracking this nut, if you're finding it really hard to undo and struggling to grip hold of the stanchion while doing it, put the fork stanchion back into the bottom clamp, just nip it up and use that to hold on to it, while you then just crack the nut a couple of turns. With the top nut removed, I can take out the spacer, followed by the washer, and finally the fork spring. I do all of this above my container so that I can catch any fork oil that spills out, and then that way I don't make a mess. With all of the internals removed, I can now pour out the remaining fork oil into my container. With all the oil removed, I then refit the spring and the rest of the internals into the fork, do up the top nut and flip it upside down. I then keep pressure on it, and while doing that, I undo the bottom locking nut. With the bottom locking nut removed, I can now re-undo the top nut, take out all the internals, and then with the spring and all the spacers out, now turn your forks upside down. Hopefully that should now come out. And with that out, and making sure you've definitely taken off that clip, give it a few tugs, and they should come apart. With the forks now fully apart, I like to lay them down as if how they've came out, in the same order and stuff. That way it always goes back together the same way. I'm now going to spend 5 minutes going over everything with a bit of brake cleaner, getting rid of all the old fork oil off everything and just cleaning it all up. That's everything to the forks on the ER6N all cleaned up and ready to be reassembled. Before I reassemble it, I like to just lay it out on the floor in the order of how it all goes back together. So here are all the internals, and here are what I call the externals, the guides, spacers, seals, all in the order of how I put it back together. As well as that, I've also got myself a little bit of fork oil for assembly lube. As well as that, I also use a little bit of red rubber grease on the seals. So I always make a start by getting the stanchion, making sure it hasn't got any raised bumps or any bits of rust. If it has, give it a bit of wet and dry sandpaper, 2000 grit's normally okay. Just flat it off, because those bumps will tear your seal in future. So once you've got that, get this part, drop that through so it comes all the way out the other side. We then get the little bottom to it and just fit that on. Once that's all on, I then slide it into the fork leg. I don't go all the way down yet though, because for now, just keep the pressure in there and put the spring in, followed by the washer, followed by the spacer. All these bits in, I can now flip it over, and it's now keeping the pressure on the internals so that we can now refit the bottom locking nut. So drop that in, get your 8mm, there we go. We now need to refit the fork guide or bushing, whatever you want to call it. When it comes to these, I'm not replacing them today, but occasionally you may want to. You want to look on here for any signs of excessive wear, discoloration, but also if you're riding and you can feel notchiness in your forks, like they're moving back and forwards, a lot of the time it's because these are worn. You get a thin one and a thicker one. The thick one is on the bottom of the fork stanchion, but the thin one just goes over like so. Let it drop down. And what you want to do is get your washer, what goes over the top, drop that down, get your fork seal driver, and then just drive that fork guide bushing back into place. When that's back in place, it's now time for your fork seal. Your new fork seal, you'll notice, has a bit of a U shape to the way it's formed. One side there's a dent in the middle, the other side there isn't. The side where there isn't a dent, you generally tend to get the writing. This is the side you want facing away from the fork oil. The side with the U dent in it, you want facing the fork oil. So don't forget that one. I normally tend to lube up the inside with a bit of fork oil, but then I put a bit of red rubber grease around the outside. So that all lubed up, don't need loads, just a little bit. Gently push it over, slide it down, seat it by hand as much as you can, get your fork seal driver, put that over, and then just gently working your way round, knocking it into place. Every couple of taps, move it a little bit so you're knocking it down evenly. And you just want to keep going until you can see the ridge line in there where that clip sits. Once you can see that, your fork seal is in enough. Once your fork seal's in there and you can see that little lip where this lives, slide that over, and always start off by putting one corner in and then working my way round. Finally, same again with the dust seal. I tend to put a little bit of fork oil on the inside, help lubricate it, bit of assembly lube, and then round this bit where the seal sits into the fork, I use a bit of red rubber grease. And then you can slide it over the fork stanchion all the way down and just gently working your way around, pushing it into place. Once that's in place, generally tend to get a bit of excess red rubber grease where it's squeezed out. So I then go over it all with a rag and just give it a quick tidy up. Now, with that all cleaned up and partially assembled, we're ready to start working on the internals. But before I put the spring and the spacer back in, I want to compress the fork tube completely. And then I'm going to measure out my fork oil. I'm going to pour in most of my fork oil, and then measure my air gap without the spring or the spacer in. As long as I've got the right air gap, it means I've got the right quantity of fork oil and the right amount of air in this fork, and then it's ready to pull this fork stanchion all the way back up, fit the spring, followed by the spacer, followed by the big spacer. Yep, as you can see, we're just touching the bottom. I'm happy with that. That's close enough. So now, fully extend the fork stanchion, put the spring in. It's always worth having a look at your spring, because sometimes they're thicker and tighter wound towards the bottom than they are the top. If it is like that, the thicker end always goes in first, followed by your washer, and then followed by your big spacer. And then finally, your fork cap can go on. And that's it. That is one fork leg done. It's the exact same process for the other fork, apart from the other fork takes a little bit less fork oil. So I'm not going to bore you all by repeating it. So I'll see you all in a minute once I've got the other one of these done and they're ready to go back on the bike. And that's it, job done. Flora's bike has got freshly refurbished suspension with fresh fork oil, new dust seals and new fork seals. Already, just by pulling the front brake in and giving the front end a bounce in the garage, it definitely feels a lot firmer and a lot nicer. So hopefully the bike should respond a lot better for her out on the road and give her a better ride. As well as that, there's also the safety side of things. Now her forks aren't leaking, there isn't a danger of contaminating the front brakes or the front tyre with oil anymore. As worst case scenario, when your forks fully go, that's what happens. All the fork oil travels down and covers your front end. And that is one of the last things you want when coming into a bend, because you're not going to make it out the bend like that. Hopefully, if you're thinking of doing this job yourself, watching this video has given you the confidence to have a go at doing it yourself. As by doing it yourself at home, you can save on garage labour. Most garages would charge you £250-ish for doing a set of fork seals and replacing the fork oil like this. When for me, the seals from eBay and the fork oil from eBay as well cost me 40 quid all in. So it's definitely worth having a go yourself at home. The only thing is you do need a bit more than the basic tools, because you're going to need a fork seal driver. But they are cheap enough. You can pick them up on eBay or Amazon for £25–30. I'll even put a link to one in the description of this video. Hopefully you found the video useful. If you have, or got any comments or opinions or anything like that, let me know down in the comments. If you haven't already, please like the video as it helps with the algorithm. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button because there's going to be more content coming soon. Anyway, for now, that's it for today's video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.